right, number 1. Solve the following equation. X squared equals 16. Don't try to get fancy with this one. If there's just one x in the whole problem, your goal is to just get x by itself. And like Benny said, to cancel out this power of 2, you would square root it. And it will cancel out that power of 2, making x by itself. But whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. What is the square root of 16? But you put plus or minus because 4 squared is 16, but isn't negative 4 squared also 16 because a negative times a negative is a positive? So it's B. Okay, don't try to get fancy and move the 16 in quadratic formula. That'll take way too long. You can do this one way easier. So, using that same method, how would we do number 2? First, it does have an additional number, so we would add 5 to the other side, making it x squared equals, and now doesn't that problem look just like problem number 1? So to cancel out the 2, we square root it, and then we square root the other side, and that's the square root of 36, which is 6. And anytime you square root to find your answer, you put plus or minus, because 6 squared is 36, but so is negative 6 squared, so it's D. Alright, number 3. What do you think I should do first? We only have one x, so no reason to get fancy when there's only one x. What do we do? First, subtract 5. Well, it's 125 though, because remember we're subtracting 5 from the 130. And now we divide by 5, and so x squared equals what? And now doesn't this look just like problem number 1? So what do we do to both sides? Square root it, which cancels that out, making x by itself, and square root this side, which gives you a 5. But it's C, because remember, anytime you take the square root of a number, when solving for x, you put plus or minus on your answer. So you should have a positive 5 answer and a negative 5. Please do not let that confuse you tomorrow. You have 2 answers, okay, because this is a quadratic. Sometimes they write it like that, and sometimes they write it separate. Okay, any questions so far? So those 3 should be pretty easy for you tomorrow. Number 4, I'm going to show you 2 ways to do number 4. The first way to do it, like if you didn't have a graphing calculator, would be to write out both factors and see what they have in common. X squared is just x times x, correct? And 5x is just 5 times x. So what do they have in common? Just an x. And that is called a greatest common factor. You factor it out. Now, what we didn't factor out was this x, which will go first, and this 5, which will go second, and then the minus sign just goes in between them. Okay, but now at this point, look, why don't you take that factor of x and set it equal to 0, and take the x minus 5 and set it equal to 0? So one of our solutions is definitely what? 0. So that marks out C and D. And then to solve this one for x, what would we do to both sides? Add this 5 over, so what did that become, a positive 5? So it's B. Now, you could factor it, but that took us, at least a minute to do. Look what else you could have done. If you just graph it, y equals x squared minus 5x. You see it cross the x-axis in 2 places, and where are those 2 places? 0 and 5. And where it is on the graph is the final answer. You don't change the sign, okay? Where you see it on the graph is the final answer. So 0, positive 5, which is what we got, but graphing took a lot less time. Okay, so for number 5, it says factor the equation to find the zeros. Well, to factor one like this, you would do the bubble method. You would look for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 4. What numbers will do that? Hold on. Anthony, okay, so what numbers did you say will multiply to negative 12 and add to negative 4? Correct. A negative 6 and a positive 2. When you add them, they'll make a negative 4. When you multiply them, they'll make a negative 12. But remember, these are factors. So the final answers would actually be what and what? Positive 6, the opposite of the factored form, and negative 2, which is C. Okay? Let me show you what else you could have done. You could have just graphed this trinomial right away. X squared minus 4x minus 12. Where do we see it cross the x-axis? Negative 2 and positive 6, which is what we got when we factored. But you could graph it and get the answer a lot faster. Does that make sense? Now, see how A and B match? Tomorrow on the test, it's a typo like this. Just do the work, circle the right answer. If it marks it wrong, I will fix it as long as you've circled the right answer. Okay? All right, number 6. Factor to find the solutions for the following equation. Well, we could factor it by dividing every one of them by 2 and then, leaving the remaining trinomial and then looking for numbers that multiply that, or we could just graph it because we have multiple choices. Most of them, yes. 2x squared plus 10x minus 12. Where does it cross the x-axis? Negative 6 and positive 1, so that would be choice D. Negative 6, positive 1. Any questions off the first page? Okay, let's go to number 7. Solve the quadratic equation by completing the square or quadratic formula. Which method do y'all want to use? Complete the square or quadratic formula? Okay, so if we're going with quadratic formula, what should we do first? Identify A, B, and C. What's the A? 1, because that's a 1x squared. What's the B? And what's the C? Once you have your A, B, and C, what do you do next? The discriminant, which is the b squared minus 4ac part. Okay, B is 2, A is 1, C is negative 9. Go ahead and type that in and tell me what you get. Okay, what'd you get? You should get 40. If you didn't get 40, I'm not sure on this one what you did, but let me show you what a lot of people did on the quiz that messed them up the whole time. These parentheses right here are the most critical, around the B. You have to have parentheses around your B. I'm not sure what you did for this one because since B wasn't negative, it really wouldn't have mattered. But you need to stay in the habit of putting these parentheses around the B. Yeah, because you got the wrong discriminant, and that means you plugged the wrong number in the rest of the formula, which messed up the rest of the thing. Okay? Now, I did give some partial credit. Like, if you had the rest of the formula written out correctly, and just the discriminant was wrong, I think I gave you, like, some partial credit. Okay, so x equals negative b. Well, our b is 2, so it'll become a negative 2. Plus or minus the square root of 40 all over 2 times a. What's the a value? So 2 times 1 will be 2. Now type these in and find your 2 final answers. I know, I'm going to teach you how to match it up. Did you say the choice board? Okay, has everybody had a chance to type them in? Not yet? Okay, when you typed in negative 2 plus the square root of 40 over 2, what'd you get? When you typed in negative 2 minus the square root of 40 over 2, what'd you get? Okay, now, obviously, those answers are not over here, or not in that format anyway. Look at this. Negative 2 over 2 will reduce to but a negative 1, right? Because a negative over a positive is a negative. There's a negative 1. That's also a negative 1, but what's not up there? There's no plus or minus up there. Okay, so this one's wrong because there's no plus or minus. Now in your calculator, type in negative 1 plus the square root of 10. Don't you get 2.2? Now type in negative 1 minus the square root of 10. So see how when you type that in both ways, you got the same answers you did from the quadratic formula? So B is the answer. You can do that same thing. First, look at your numbers out here and reduce, and that'll kind of tell you where to start, like typing it in. Okay, why don't you try number 8 using that same method. Try it by yourself. Same method. Okay, the first thing you would do if you're doing it by quadratic formula is identify A, B, and C. A was 1, B was negative 20, C was 65. Then you plug those numbers in the discriminant formula, which is B squared minus 4AC. Negative 20 has to be in parentheses or it'll come out wrong. Okay, so negative 20 squared minus 4 times 1 times 65, you should have got 140 for your discriminant. Then, this changes to a positive 20, even though it was negative, because there's already a negative built into the front of the formula. Okay, so positive 20 plus or minus the square root of 140 over 2, because your A value is 1, and 2 times 1 is 2. Now, what did you get for your final answers? And, okay. Now, instead of typing in each one of these choices to see which one makes 15.9 and 4.1, first let's narrow it down. What will 20 over 2 reduce to? A positive 10. So first type in this one. What's 10 plus the square root of 35? 15.9. What's 10 minus the square root of 35? 4.1. So B is the same answer, just in a different format. Does anybody have any questions about 7 or 8? Okay. Well, to get the square root of 35 is a totally different method where you would factor tree by looking for like 70 times 2, 35 times 2. Like, have y'all ever learned that method? That's how they got the square root of 35. But we haven't really learned that, so you don't need to worry about that. You just need to reduce 20 divided by 2 to 10, and then type in 10 plus the square root of 35 and make sure it's one of these two numbers, and 10 minus the square root of 35 and make sure it's one of those, and you'll know this is the same thing as that. This is just the decimal versions of this. Okay, let's move on. Number 9. Which of these is the result of completing the square for this expression? Okay, so for this one, we're going to have to complete the square. X squared plus 6x minus 36, and I'm going to go ahead and set it equal to 0. Does anybody remember the first step for completing the square? Molly? Correct. You move the 36 to the other side. Well, to do that, don't you have to add it over? So it'll become x squared plus 6x equals 36. Now, does anybody remember step 2? Okay, Kiera? Hurry, we ain't got time to play. Ezekiel? Well, you do take the 6, the b value, divide it by 2, and square it. And what's 6 divided by 2? 3, and then 3 squared is 9. So you would add 9 to both sides. So look, on the right side, what do those numbers add up to be? 45. So I'm already leaning towards what answer? D. But let's talk about how they got the rest of this. X squared plus 6x plus 9 is a perfect square trinomial. The reason it's a perfect square trinomial is because the binomials are the same. Isn't it x plus 3x plus 3? Because 3 times 3 is 9, 3 plus 3 is 6. Well, since they match, can't you just write it once and square it? And then if you were to move the 45 back over here, wouldn't you have to subtract it to get it over there? And so that's how they ended up with this. Okay, now let's talk about how you could get this answer without knowing how to complete the square. The first thing you would do if you don't know how to complete the square is to graph the original. Okay? So y equals x squared plus 6x minus 36. And that's what the parabola looks like. Then you would just start graphing every choice. So starting with A. Leave the original up there so you have it to compare to, and graph A. X plus 6 squared minus 30. Did that make the same parabola? So A's out. Then you would graph B. X plus 6 squared minus 49. Did that make the same parabola? No. So A and B are out. They didn't make the same parabola that this one did. Then you would graph C, and obviously you would know it's not going to make the same. And then you would graph D. X plus 3 minus 45. You see how when I graph it, there's the original, and then there's D coming in somewhere? Wait, why did it do? Let me look. X plus, oh, I did 495 accidentally. So that's why we didn't see it, because it went down 495 units. It was off the screen. Okay, now that it says minus 45, look, there's the original, and see how D's just covered it right up? So that's the way you could do it without being able to complete the square. Just match it up. Well, yeah, but you're going to see when you do any of these, you're going to see that extra line up here. So if you don't see anything new up here, it means it's the same. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? Okay, so now that I know D's the right answer, I'm going to use that answer to answer these questions. Remember, I'm looking at D. X plus 3 squared minus 45. As a result of completing the square, the quadratic expression is in what form? You'll have 4 choices that drop down when you click that drop down arrow. The 4 choices will be standard form, vertex form, factored form, or intercept form. This is in what form? Vertex form. So it would be vertex form. Now, the reason it's in vertex form is because you're able to identify the vertex of the parabola by looking at it. X plus 3 in the parentheses moves the parabola how? What direction will it move it, and how many? Left 3. Remember, the inside number moves it horizontally, and plus is left. The outside number moves it vertically, and minus is down. So if you move the whole parabola left 3, then down 45, where does that put the vertex? Guys, if the whole parabola moves left 3, down 45, the vertex is now where? Negative 3, negative 45. You could also, remember we just graphed it in the previous question, couldn't you go to the table, and if you go to left 3, you'll see down 45? Okay, that's also going to be a drop down though, so you'll have choices to choose from. And then in this case, is that vertex a max or a min? The vertex is right here, so max or min? A min. If the parabola opens up, your vertex is a min. If the parabola opens down, your vertex is a max. Any questions from that page? Standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, that's standard form. Vertex form is like this. And then factored form is just where it's like 2 bubbles, like x and x with numbers. And then we've never even talked about intercept form. Like, okay? Okay? I mean, this is I mean, this is not even a real thing. Vertex form and intercept form is the same thing. Well, no, never mind. This is not a real thing, okay? It's vertex form because you're able to identify the vertex. Well, standard form is this. Vertex form is when it looks like this. Okay, next page. What are the zeros of the graph shown at the right? Well, you have to know what they mean by zeros. What are zeros? Correct. And it crosses the x-axis here at 0 and here at, so the answer is B. That's got to be the easiest one. Okay, number 12. Which of the following is equivalent to the equation y equals x squared plus 6x plus 5 and its given graph? So what's the first thing you should do? Well, you could, but you're just going to get that picture that's already on your screen. What do you need to look at on the picture? The zeros, the x-intercepts. Where does it cross? Okay, so -5 and -1 are your zeros. But when you write zeros as factors in parentheses, what do you have to do? Change their sign. So what's the answer? D. Now, if you're debating between B and D, like if you can't remember what the sign should be, what could you do? Couldn't you graph B and D and see which one produces this one? Okay, look. Y equals, first I'll graph B. Okay, first I'll graph B. X minus 5, x minus 1. Does this produce the graph that's on our paper? No, it's on the positive side of the x-axis. Ours is on the negative side. If we go in and graph choice D with pluses instead of minuses, I know it's not in the same order, but it's the same thing. Now look, it's on the left side like it is on our paper. -1 and -5. So the signs in factor form are the opposite sign, okay? All right, number 13. What must be added to x squared plus 18x to complete the square? Well, we just did a complete the square problem a few minutes ago. So they're wanting to basically know how you get the number added right here. How do we get this number? Right? B over 2 squared. What's your B value? Divided by 2 squared, 81. That's all you do. Number 14. It says solve using any method. It's a trinomial set equals 0. So what method would you try first? What? I would graph it first. You can quadratic formula, but that's going to take you a lot longer than graphing it, so let's graph it first. Y equals 7x squared plus 6x minus 16. When we graph it, we see that it crosses exactly at -2 and a teeny bit past the 1. So wouldn't that be right here, -2 and a teeny bit past 1? So see? If you had done quadratic formula, you would have got those same answers. It would have just taken you longer. Why isn't it D? B? Because that one crosses at +2. Remember, the graph, you don't change the sign. It crosses at -2, so that's the final answer. -2 and +1.1. Whatever you see on the graph is final. You don't change any signs from the graph. Because we were writing it as factors. When you're writing it in bubbles like that, you change the sign. But if you're not, and you're just writing them like x equals, you don't change the sign. All right, number 15. Find the value of n such that x squared minus 15x plus n is a perfect square trinomial. What does it mean by perfect square trinomial? Well, it means that the factors of it match. So like they'll be identical. So remember, when factoring, you're looking for two numbers, and those two numbers would have to add to negative 15 and multiply to get whatever this number is. Well, what numbers add up to negative 15, but it's the same number in both? Guys, how would you get a 15 when adding the same number to it? It's going to be a decimal because 15 is odd. Right. Wouldn't it be negative 7.5 and negative 7.5? Because they're the same number and they add up to negative 15? And aren't those same two numbers supposed to multiply to give you this number? So multiply those now and tell me what you get. Okay, what'd you get? When you multiply negative 7.5 times negative 7.5, what's it say? Okay, but that's in decimal form. How do you use your calculator to change it to a fraction? Math, and then I think it's number 1. Math number 1, and then hit enter. And what does it say? So it's B. You just have to remember that a perfect square trinomial means that the factors match. So whatever this number is, you'll just half of 15 is 7.5, and then you'll multiply those to get you this third number. Okay, number 16, solve using any method. Okay, well you could do many methods for this one. You can see that the 4 will divide out of all 3, so you could GCF at first, or you could quadratic formula, but before I tried anything like that, what would you do? Graph it. Because with multiple choice, I mean, you can pretty much just look at the graph and know the answer. Y equals 4x squared minus 12x minus 16. When I graph it, I see that it crosses at negative 1 and positive 4. So negative 1 and positive 4 are the answers, C. Remember, the graph is the final answer. You don't change the sign of whatever's on the graph unless you're writing it in factors, which is in parentheses. Okay, next page. Number 17, use the function 8x squared minus 24x equals negative 16 to answer both parts. Identify the values for A, B, and C. What's the A value? What's the B value? What's the C value? Positive 16. And why is it all of a sudden positive? Right, because to get this set equal to 0, to do quadratic formula 2, you would have to add it back over, making it positive 16. Now they want you to take that and do the quadratic formula to find the two solutions. Before you go through all the work of the quadratic formula, what might you try first? Graph it. Okay, so y equals 8x squared minus 24x plus 16. Oh, I graph almost every day in here. Okay, where does it cross? Exactly at 1 and exactly at 2. If you go to the table, you can see that it's definitely 1 and 2 because look, 1 is 0, 2, the y value is 0. So it crosses exactly at 1, exactly at 2. You could have done the quadratic formula and you would have ended up with those answers. It would just taken you longer. You could have also factored by factoring out the 8, but that would have taken you just as long as the quadratic formula. Alright, now for those of you who have been absent the last couple of days, this is what we've been learning, word problems. Okay, there's 2 of them on the test, so pay attention and you'll pretty much catch up from the last 2 days. We throw an object upward from the top of a 1,200-foot tall building. The height of the object measured in feet, t seconds after we threw it, is negative 14t squared plus 150t plus 1,400. Where is the object 3 seconds after we threw it? Well, what can we do with this 3? How do you know that it goes in t? Look, t seconds. So 3 will go in t. So go ahead and plug in a 3 right here and a 3 right here. So negative 14 times 3 squared plus 150 times 3 plus 1,400. Go ahead and type that in. did y'all get? Right, 1,724 feet. How long does it take for the object to hit the ground? How would you figure that out? Make it equal 0, and then can't you just graph this? So y equals negative 14 t squared plus 150 t plus 1400. Okay, the problem is we can't see it hit the ground because there's nothing showing up over here, so it must be off the screen. We could go to the table. Look at the table. Look at 3. Isn't that 3 seconds in that 1724 like we got when we plugged in 3? So to find out when it hits the ground, I'm looking at it, it's getting higher, it's getting higher. There's the highest it gets, and now it starts to go back down. It's falling to the ground. So let's go until we see it hit the ground. Okay, look. 16 seconds, it was still 216 feet above ground. 17 seconds is now below ground, but obviously that's not practical. So it hit the ground at 16 point something, right? So the only way to know for sure, since this is free response, would be to what? It's free response. No, not this part. So what could we do, since it's not a whole number, to find the exact right answer? I mean, yeah, technically you could like plug in like 16.5 into t, 16.6 into t, and see which one brought you to 0, or you could just quadratic formula. Okay, go ahead and do the quadratic formula to that one. Well, you still got a calculator, so it really doesn't make a difference. Okay, so since we know that it crosses, or it hits the ground between 16 and 17 seconds, but there's no multiple choice, we'll need to do the quadratic formula to see exactly how long it takes before it hits the ground. So first you need to identify your A, B, and C. A would equal negative 14, B would equal 150, and C would equal 1400. You then do the discriminant, so you take the B value, square it, then minus 4 times the A value times the C value. Type that in and you'll know your discriminant. And you get 100,900. So now we finish out the quadratic formula. X equals negative B would be negative 150 plus or minus the square root of the discriminant, which we found to be 100,900, divided by 2 times your A value. Your A value is negative 14, so 2 times that would be negative 28. Now you're just going to type in negative 150 plus the square root of that over negative 28 and negative 50 minus the square root of that over negative 28. And that's how you'll get your two solutions. Okay, so once you type those in, you should get negative 5.9. And we were able to see that one when we graphed it. Okay, right there. It looks pretty much like it's at negative 6 because it's so close, negative 5.9. And then the other one we couldn't see on the graph because it was right 16.7 units. And so that's our answer. 16.7 seconds is how long it'll take for it to hit the ground. Okay, now let's look at question 20 and then we'll be done. If a toy rocket is launched vertically upward from ground level with an initial velocity of 128 feet per second, then its height h after t seconds is given by the equation h of t equals negative 14t squared plus 132t. So A says how long will it take for the rocket to return to the ground? So when will it hit the ground? First let's graph it. y equals negative 14t squared plus 132t. Okay, here's when it was launched, 0 seconds, 0 feet. Here's when it hit the ground. It's obviously between 9 and 10, but since it's a decimal value, the way we're going to have to figure it out exactly is quadratic formula, because it's 9 point something. So A is negative 14, B is 132, and then there's no constant value, so it's 0 for C. So it'll be B squared minus 4 times your A value times your C value. Okay, go ahead and type that in. And then you're going to get 17,424 for your discriminant. You then continue with the quadratic formula, so negative B would be negative 132 plus or minus the square root of 17,424 divided by 2 times A, and your A value is negative 14, so 2 times that would be negative 28. Now type in negative 132 plus all that over negative 28, and then negative 32 minus the square root of 17,424 over negative 28. Okay, my two answers were 0. And then the second answer, when I typed it in, since I used alpha y equals n over d, it gave me the answer as a fraction, 66 over 7. You can then go to just math, number 2 decimal, enter, and it will change it to 9.428, so we'll just say 9.43. And so that's how long it would take to hit the ground, because 0 represents before you launch the toy rocket. And then 9.43 is how many seconds it took to get back to the ground. How long will it take to get to its maximum height? Okay, so how long? We want to know how many seconds it's going to take to get to its highest point. Well, since we already have a graph, we'll just go to the table and we'll just look for the highest y value. Okay, I can see that it starts at 0, 0. Before we launch it, it hasn't gone anywhere. And then at 1 second it's that high, at 2 seconds it's that high. You can see that at 5 seconds it reaches the highest it's going to get, 310 feet. So when it says how long will it take, the answer is 5 seconds. And what is its maximum height? 310 feet.